Hello, I'm John Farrelly, Superintendent at Dare County Schools.
And I'm Sheila Davies, Director of the Dare County Department of Health and Human Services. We would like to share some important information and updates on our health and safety procedures that will take effect when students return to school. The Dare County Department of Health and Human Services has been working very closely for months with Dare County schools to prepare for students and staff returning to on-site school. We understand the mixed feelings of excitement, nervousness, and even fear this return brings, and want to assure you that we are prepared.
For parents or guardians, talking to your child or children about returning to school should be the #1 priority on your back-to-school checklist. It is important to share with children how things will be different and why. Please have conversations now to prepare them and explain that all of these measures have been put in place to help keep them and the school staff safe. Items to share during this conversation include: staff and students are required to wear a face covering when they're in the school building, other than at lunch or during special mass breaks. Please know that some staff and students have approved exemptions from wearing masks. Please be respectful and non-judgmental. Another important thing to share with your child is that schools will be using physical distancing to the greatest extent possible as an added protective measure. This will mean recess will look different, classroom setup will look different, lunchtime will be different, as well as time spent in hallways and moving from one class or activity to another. We've all heard over the past 8 months how important it is to follow the 3 W's to protect against the spread of COVID-19. Wearing a face covering, waiting 6 feet apart, and washing your hands frequently with soap and water or using hand sanitizer. Following the 3 W's while at school is equally important. Schools are an extension of our community, and the healthier our community is, the healthier our schools are, and vice versa. It is critical we all do our part and continue to practice the 3 W's. Another very important practice that will help protect our schools and community is to make sure you or your child stay home if you're sick. The state is requiring daily health screenings and temperature checks at all North Carolina public schools as additive protective measures. In order to be as efficient as possible in taking daily temperature checks, Dare County Schools has thermal temperature units at each entry point to take student and staff temperatures as they enter our school buildings. Following state guidelines, if a student has a temperature of 100.4 or higher, parents will be notified and the student will be sent home. To meet the daily health screening requirements, DCS has a health screener text platform. A survey must be filled out every day that students enter the school building. This form will be sent by text message or email each morning at 6 a.m. If you prefer to receive a text message or you have a specific email that needs to be sent to, please fill out the COVID-19 screening app form for each child using your parent portal account.
The state has also mandated that North Carolina schools follow very strict protocols regarding when students and staff may return to school if they are symptomatic. If a student or staff member is screened out, meaning they answered yes to one of the screening questions, or they have a fever of 100.4 or greater, the state of North Carolina mandates returning to school occurs according to one of the following. If the individual has a negative COVID-19 test, they can return to school once there is no fever without the use of fever-reducing medicines and they have felt well for 24 hours. If they have been in close contact with someone who is tested positive for COVID-19, they must remain in quarantine for the entire 14 days, regardless of a negative test result. If the individual has been diagnosed with COVID-19 but does not have symptoms, they must remain out of school until at least 10 days have passed since the date of their initial positive COVID-19 test. If the individual has been determined to have been in close contact with someone diagnosed with COVID-19, they must remain out of school for 14 days since the last date of contact, unless they test positive, in which case their return to school would be based on symptom onset date or test date if they are asymptomatic. If their test is negative, they must complete the full 14 days of quarantine. An individual can return to school following normal school policies if they receive confirmation of an alternative diagnosis from a healthcare provider that would explain the COVID-19-like symptoms, once there is no fever without the use of fever-reducing medicines and they have felt well for 24 hours. If they have been in close contact with someone who tested positive for COVID-19, they must remain in quarantine for the entire 14 days, regardless of an alternate diagnosis. With the increase in cases we are seeing in our community these days, we should expect that we will see cases of COVID-19 in our schools. Despite all of the best prevention efforts, it's bound to occur. If an individual, student, or staff member is identified as a laboratory-confirmed positive COVID-19 school-associated case, we will work very closely with the school to identify and notify all direct contacts. Direct contacts are individuals who have been 6 feet or less for 15 minutes or greater from a laboratory-confirmed case. We are well prepared to address any positive case and have established very detailed response protocols. If you or your child is identified as a direct contact to a laboratory-confirmed school-associated positive case, you will receive an email directly from the superintendent notifying you and providing you details on quarantine requirements, testing information, and a time for a live webinar or conference call to address your questions or concerns as appropriate. Again, we understand the myriad of emotions individuals are experiencing during these times. We can best manage those emotions by focusing on facts, not fear, and seeking reliable sources of information when questions arise. We have a number of resources available to help you navigate your questions, including the Dare County COVID-19 website at darenc.com/COVID-19, the Dare County Call Center, open Monday through Friday from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. at 252-475-5008, and the Dare County email address at covid19@darenc.com.
Our goal is to keep your children and our DCS staff members as safe as possible as we open schools back up. We can accomplish our goals by working together and being vigilant and following all of our safety protocols. Please feel free to reach out to me or any member of my senior leadership team with questions. Thank you.